silence. That was the only thing that filled the room when Sebastian Sterling walked in. In the high-stakes world of New York finance, they called him the Reaper. He didn't just fire people, he erased them. And tonight, at the city's most exclusive restaurant, the Gilded Oak, he was in a mood that could freeze water. 3 waitresses had already been sent home in tears before the appetizers arrived. The manager was shaking. The kitchen was silent. No one dared to approach table 1. No one, except for a girl named Cassidy Miller, who had $12 in her bank account and nothing left to lose. What she did next didn't just save her job, it shocked a billionaire into silence and changed the course of history. You think you know how this ends? You have no idea. The air inside the Gilded Oak was always cold, but tonight the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees the moment the black Maybach pulled up to the curb. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the restaurant, blurring the lights of Manhattan into streaks of gold and charcoal. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with a terrified tension. Preston Hayes, the restaurant's seasoned manager, who had served senators and royalty without breaking a sweat, was currently dabbing his forehead with a silk handkerchief. He stood by the host stand, his knuckles white as he gripped the reservation book. "He's early," Preston whispered, his voice cracking. "He wasn't supposed to be here until 8. The table isn't ready. The wine isn't breathed." Cassidy Miller, standing near the service station, folding linen napkins with practiced precision, looked up. She was 23, with tired eyes that hinted at too many double shifts and not enough sleep. Her uniform was pressed, her apron spotless, but beneath the facade, she was exhausted. Her rent was 3 weeks late, and her younger brother, Toby, needed tuition money for his trade school by Friday. She didn't have time for rich men's tantrums. "Who is it, Preston?" Cassidy asked, her voice low. "Sebastian Sterling," Preston hissed, as if saying the name too loud would summon a thunderstorm. "CEO of Sterling Dynamics, the man who acquired the Kensington hotel chain last week, just to fire the entire board of directors, because he didn't like the thread count of their sheets. He's difficult." Difficult was an understatement. Sebastian Sterling was a shark in a bespoke Italian suit. At 32, he controlled more real estate in New York than the city government. He was known for his icy demeanor, his ruthless efficiency, and his absolute intolerance for incompetence. Rumor had it, he once walked out of a Michelin-star dinner because the water was poured from the wrong side. The heavy oak doors swung open, the restaurant, usually buzzing with the low hum of conversation and the clink of silverware, went dead silent. Sebastian Sterling entered. He was tall, dominating the space with broad shoulders and a jawline that looked like it had been cut from granite. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that probably cost more than Cassidy made in a year. His dark hair was swept back, and his eyes, piercing cold blue, scanned the room like a predator assessing a herd. He wasn't looking for a table, he was looking for a floor. Behind him trailed 2 assistants, both looking as if they were walking to the gallows. "Mr. Sterling," Preston rushed forward, forcing a smile that looked painful. "We weren't expecting you, so my schedule changed," Sebastian said. His voice was a deep baritone, smooth but devoid of warmth. He didn't stop walking. He bypassed the host stand entirely, heading straight for the best table in the house, Table 1, the corner booth with the view of the skyline. "I assume my table is available, or do I need to buy this building to get a seat?" No, of course not. Right this way," Preston stammered, frantically gesturing to the busboys to clear the table that had just been vacated. Cassidy watched from the shadows of the service station. She saw the way the other servers scattered. Sarah, the lead waitress, practically hid in the kitchen. Mark, the sommelier, suddenly found a very interesting spot on the floor to stare at. "Who's taking table 1?" Preston asked, running back to the service station, panic in his eyes. "Sarah refuses. David is shaking." Cassidy looked at the manager. She looked at her co-workers, terrified of a man just because he had a heavy wallet and a bad attitude. Then she thought of the eviction notice on her kitchen counter. She thought of Toby's tuition. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. "I'll take him," Cassidy said, picking up a fresh menu. Preston looked at her, eyes wide. "Cassidy, are you sure? He fired a waiter last month for breathing too loudly." "He's just a man, Preston," Cassidy said, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "And I need the tips. Let me work." She smoothed her apron, took a deep breath, and walked out onto the floor. She didn't know it yet, but she was walking into the lion's den. And the lion was hungry. Sebastian Sterling did not look up when Cassidy approached the table. He was already engrossed in a stack of documents his assistant had laid out, a gold fountain pen tapping rhythmically, irritatingly, against the mahogany table. "Sparkling water, room temperature, lime on the side." "Not in the glass," Sebastian said, without greeting her. "And if you bring me the 2018 Pinot Noir, turn around before you reach the table. I want the 15 Reserve." He spoke with the casual arrogance of someone who had never been told no in his entire adult life. "Good evening, sir," Cassidy said, her voice steady. She didn't scramble. She didn't apologize for existing. She placed the coaster down gently. "We have the 2015 Reserve decanting now. It needs another 4 minutes to open up properly. I'll bring the water immediately." Sebastian stopped tapping the pen. He looked up. For a second, their eyes met. He seemed surprised that she hadn't stuttered. Usually by now the server was trembling. Cassidy held his gaze, respectful, but not submissive. 4 minutes, Sebastian repeated, testing her. "If it's 5, take it back." "It will be 4, she replied, turning on her heel. The first 20 minutes went by with agonizing slowness. Cassidy served him with military precision. She placed the silverware exactly 1 inch from the edge of the table. She poured the water without a splash. She presented the wine label, poured the taste, and waited. Sebastian swirled the glass, sniffed it, and took a sip. He paused. The entire restaurant seemed to be holding its breath. Preston was watching from behind a potted fern. "Acceptable," Sebastian muttered, returning to his papers. The staff let out a collective sigh of relief. But the night was young, and disaster was waiting in the wings. It happened during the main course. Cassidy was in the kitchen picking up his filet mignon, rare, no sauce, when she heard a commotion near the kitchen doors. A new busboy, a teenager named Leo, who had only started 3 days ago, was rushing out with a tray of heavy ceramic side plates. He was moving too fast, trying to impress the manager. He turned the corner sharp, right as Sebastian's assistant, a nervous man named Arthur, stood up abruptly to take a phone call. Smash. It wasn't just a dropped plate. Leo collided with the assistant, and the tray went airborne. 3 ceramic plates crashed onto the edge of table 1, shattering into jagged shards. A piece of ceramic flew up and skidded across the table, knocking over Sebastian's glass of red wine. The dark crimson liquid splashed across the table, soaking the edges of the legal documents Sebastian was reading. The silence that followed was deafening. It was absolute. Leo, the busboy, turned pale white. He looked like he was about to faint. Oh my God, Sebastian Sterling stood up slowly. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. That would have been less terrifying. Instead, he simply picked up a napkin and dabbed a drop of wine from his cuff. His face was a mask of cold fury. "Preston," Sebastian said, his voice low but carrying across the entire room. Preston sprinted over, looking like he was having a cardiac event. "Mr. Sterling, I am so sorry. Get him out of my sight," Sebastian said, pointing a finger at the terrified teenager. "And I don't just mean from the dining room. I mean from the building. Fire him, now." Leo burst into tears. "Please, sir, I need this job. My mum is—" "I don't care about your mother," Sebastian cut him off, his voice like ice. "You are incompetent. Incompetence is a disease, and I won't have it around me. Get out." He turned his cold gaze to Preston. "And because you hired him, consider your contract with my holding company for this building under review. I suggest you find a new line of work." It was a massacre. In 30 seconds, he had destroyed a teenager's livelihood and threatened the manager's entire career. The injustice of it, the sheer cruelty, made Cassidy's blood boil. She stood there, holding the tray with his steak, her knuckles turning white. She knew she should stay quiet. She knew she should just put the steak down, apologize, and hope he didn't fire her too. That was what a smart person would do. That was what a survivor would do. But Cassidy Miller was done surviving. She walked up to the table. She set the steak down with a firm clack. "Sir," Cassidy said. Sebastian turned to her, his eyes narrowing. "What?" "The boy tripped because your assistant stood up without looking," Cassidy said loudly. The room gasped. Preston looked like he had been shot. Sebastian froze. He turned his whole body toward Cassidy. He looked at her as if a talking dog had just addressed him. "Excuse me," Sebastian asked, dangerously soft. "I saw it," Cassidy continued, her voice trembling slightly but gaining strength. "Leo was walking the designated path. Your assistant, Arthur, jumped up to take a call and backed into him. It wasn't Leo's fault, and firing a kid for an accident caused by your own staff isn't efficiency, Mr. Sterling. It's bullying." The silence in the room was heavy enough to crush bones. Arthur, the assistant, looked down at his shoes. Sebastian took a step closer to Cassidy. He towered over her. He smelled of expensive cologne and intimidation. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," Cassidy said, looking up into his steel blue eyes. "You're Sebastian Sterling. You have a net worth of $6 billion, and right now you're ruining a 17-year-old's life over a wine stain and a bruised ego. The steak is rare, just how you like it. Will there be anything else?" For a moment, nobody moved. The tension was electric. Sebastian stared at her, his face unreadable. He looked at the wine soaking into the tablecloth. He looked at the trembling busboy. He looked at his assistant, Arthur, who was sweating profusely. "Arthur," Sebastian said, not breaking eye contact with Cassidy. "Did you stand up without looking?" Sir, the call was urgent. It was the Tokyo partners. Arthur stammered. "Did you knock into the boy?" Sebastian barked. Yes, I suppose I did," Arthur whispered. Sebastian looked back at Cassidy. His eyes searched hers, looking for fear, looking for regret. He found neither. He found a fire that matched his own. A strange expression crossed his face. It wasn't a smile. Sebastian Sterling didn't smile, but the ice cracked. "Leave the steak," Sebastian said. He sat back down. "Preston." Yes, Mr. Sterling. The boy stays. Get me a new tablecloth." "And Arthur?" "Sir, get out. You're fired. If you can't check your surroundings before you move, you can't handle my mergers." Arthur gaped, gathered his things, and fled. Sebastian picked up his knife and fork. He cut a piece of the steak, put it in his mouth, and chewed slowly. He swallowed, then looked up at Cassidy, who was still standing there, heart pounding so hard she thought she might pass out. "What is your name?" he asked. Cassidy. Cassidy Miller. Well, Cassidy Miller, Sebastian said, pointing his knife at her. You have a big mouth. It's annoying. He paused, taking a sip of the water she had poured. But you're the only person in this room who isn't a coward. Clear this broken glass, and bring me the dessert menu. Cassidy exhaled, her knees weak. She had survived, but she didn't know that she had done something much more dangerous than survive. She had intrigued him. And Sebastian Sterling was a man who collected things that intrigued him. As she walked back to the kitchen, shaking, she didn't see Sebastian pull out his phone. He didn't check his stocks. He sent a text to his head of security, Cassidy Miller, the Gilded Oak. Find out everything about her. By morning. The waitress had shocked the CEO. Now the game was about to begin. The morning sun over Brooklyn didn't feel hopeful. It felt exposing. It glared through the cracked window of Cassidy's tiny apartment, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air and the red eviction notice sitting on the laminate counter. Cassidy sat at the kitchen table, staring at her bank app on her phone. Balance. $12.43. The night at the Gilded Oak felt like a fever dream. She had stood up to the most powerful man in New York, and he hadn't fired her. In fact, he had tipped her $500. But $500 was a drop in the bucket when her landlord was demanding 3 months of back rent by noon, and Toby's trade school tuition was due in 48 hours. Cass! Cassidy looked up. Toby stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. At 19, he was lanky and sweet, with grease permanently under his fingernails from his mechanic classes. He was the only family she had left after their parents died in a car crash 4 years ago. He was the reason she worked double shifts. He was the reason she swallowed her pride every single day. I'm fine, Tobbs, Cassidy lied, forcing a smile. Just checking the schedule. I can quit the program, Toby said quietly, seeing the red paper on the counter. I can get a job at the warehouse. They're hiring. No, Cassidy said, her voice sharp. She stood up and grabbed his shoulders. You're going to be a master mechanic. You're going to have a career, not just a job. I handle the money. You handle the engines. That's the deal. Toby looked like he wanted to argue, but a heavy knock on the door interrupted them. Cassidy's stomach dropped. The landlord. She walked to the door, preparing her best plea for an extension. She opened it, expecting to see Mr. Henderson's scowling face. Instead, she saw a suit. Standing in her dimly lit hallway was a man who looked like he had been cut out of a magazine. He wore an earpiece and dark sunglasses, even though it was dim inside the building. Behind him, parked illegally in front of the fire hydrant, was a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. Cassidy Miller, the man asked. Who's asking? Cassidy said, gripping the doorframe. Mr. Sterling requests your presence, the man said. It wasn't a question. Cassidy felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Had he changed his mind? Was he going to sue her for the spilled wine? Rich men were petty. She knew that better than anyone. I'm getting ready for work, Cassidy said defensively. Mr. Sterling has bought out your shift for the day, the man replied smoothly. And he has handled your landlord. Cassidy blinked. What? Mr. Henderson has been paid for the next 6 months. Now please, the car is waiting. Cassidy turned to look at Toby, who was staring wide-eyed from the kitchen. She realized she didn't have a choice. Sebastian Sterling had just paid her rent. She was already in his debt. I'll be back, she told Toby. Lock the door. The ride to Manhattan was silent. The elevator ride to the 50th floor of Sterling Tower was even quieter. When the doors opened, Cassidy stepped into a world of glass, chrome, and intimidation. She was led into a corner office that was larger than her entire apartment building. The view of Central Park was breathtaking, but the temperature in the room was Arctic. Sebastian Sterling stood by the window, his back to her. He was on the phone. "I don't care what the board thinks, Dominic," Sebastian said, his voice low and dangerous. "If they try to block the merger, I'll liquidate the subsidiary. Try me." He hung up and turned around. He looked just as imposing as he had the night before, perhaps even more so in his own domain. He studied Cassidy for a long moment, taking in her worn jeans and cheap sweater. "You look different out of uniform," he said. "And you look exactly the same," Cassidy replied, crossing her arms to hide the fact that her hands were shaking. "You paid my rent." "Why?" "Investment," Sebastian said, walking over to his desk. He didn't ask her to sit. "I did a background check on you, Cassidy. You're drowning, parents deceased, brother in trade school, 3 months behind on rent. Credit score is abysmal. You're a fighter, but you're losing." Cassidy felt her face heat up. "Is this why you brought me here? To mock me?" "No, I brought you here to offer you a job." "I'm a waitress," she said. "I don't know anything about corporate finance." "I don't need a finance manager. I have armies of those," Sebastian said. He leaned against the edge of his desk, crossing his ankles. "I need a wife." The air left the room. Cassidy stared at him, sure she had misheard. "Excuse me." "My grandmother, Beatrice Sterling, holds the tie-breaking vote on the board of directors," Sebastian explained, his tone clinical, as if discussing a stock split. "She is old-fashioned. She believes a man cannot lead a company if he cannot lead a family. She is threatening to vote with my rival, Dominic Kane, to oust me as CEO unless I show some stability. Specifically, she wants to see me settle down before the annual gala in 3 months. "So get married," Cassidy said, baffled. "You're a billionaire. Pick a supermodel." "I don't want a supermodel. They talk to the press. They want love. They want attention," Sebastian said with a sneer. "I need a business partner. I need someone who can act the part, sign a contract, and leave when the term is up without emotional hysteria." He took a step toward her. "I watched you last night. You faced me down. You didn't flinch. You're a good liar, Cassidy. You pretended you weren't terrified of me, and you sold it." "I was terrified," she whispered. "Exactly. But you didn't show it. That is the skill I need." Sebastian picked up a leather folder and tossed it onto the desk. "The contract is simple. We pretend to be engaged for 6 months. You move into my penthouse. You attend events with me. You charm my grandmother. You convince the world that Sebastian Sterling has a heart. And in return?" "In return," Sebastian said, his eyes locking onto hers, "I pay off your brother's tuition in full. I buy you an apartment, in your name, fully paid off, anywhere in the city. And at the end of the 6 months, you get $2 million cash." Cassidy felt dizzy. $2 million. It was a life she couldn't even imagine. It was freedom. It was safety for Toby. "What's the catch?" she asked. "The catch is that my world is a shark tank," Sebastian said. "The press will hunt you. My family will test you. Dominic Kane will try to destroy you to get to me. And most importantly," he leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper, "you must never, under any circumstances, fall in love with me. I am not a good man, Cassidy. I am a business transaction. If you break that rule, the deal is void." Cassidy looked at the contract. She looked at the man who was offering to save her life while promising to keep his soul locked away. She thought of Toby's grease-stained hands. She thought of the eviction notice. "Where do I sign?" she asked. The transformation began immediately. Cassidy wasn't allowed to go back to her apartment. Sebastian's team, A terrifying, efficient group of stylists and assistants descended upon her like a flock of birds. Her old clothes were packed away in a box. In their place came racks of silk, cashmere, and designer labels she couldn't even pronounce. Her hair was trimmed and glossed. Her nails were manicured. She was poked, prodded, and polished until she barely recognized the woman in the mirror. "You look expensive," Sebastian said 3 days later. They were in the foyer of his penthouse, a sprawling glass palace overlooking the Hudson River. Cassidy was wearing an emerald green evening gown that clung to her curves, her hair swept up in an elegant chignon. "I feel like an imposter," Cassidy muttered, tugging at the diamond bracelet on her wrist. "This thing costs more than my life." "Stop fidgeting," Sebastian commanded, stepping closer to adjust the lapel of his tuxedo. "Tonight is the test, the Galloway Charity Gala. My grandmother will be there. Dominic Caney will be there. If they smell fear, they will eat you alive." "I'm not afraid," Cassidy lied. "Good, because we have a story," Sebastian said, rehearsing the lie they had practiced. "We met at a library. You dropped a book. It was Pride and Prejudice. I picked it up. It was love at first sight." He said the words with zero emotion, making it sound ridiculous. "You in a library?" Cassidy scoffed. "Nobody is going to believe that." "They will believe it because you will make them believe it," Sebastian said. He offered her his arm. "Shall we, darling?" The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. As soon as the limousine pulled up, the flashes of the paparazzi cameras blinded her. The noise was deafening. "Mr. Sterling, over here! Who is the girl? Is it true about the merger?" Sebastian didn't blink. He placed a hand on the small of Cassidy's back. His touch was warm, firm, and possessive. It sent a jolt of electricity through her that she wasn't expecting. "Keep your head up," he whispered in her ear. "Smile. Don't answer questions." They swept inside, into the Temple of Dendur. The room was filled with the city's elite. Senators, actresses, tycoons. Cassidy felt small, but she remembered the role she was playing. She was the woman who tamed the Reaper. "Sebastian!" A voice like cracking ice cut through the crowd. An elderly woman in a wheelchair, draped in pearls and purple velvet, approached them. She was pushed by a stern-looking nurse, Beatrice Sterling, the matriarch. "Grandmother," Sebastian said, bowing his head slightly. "You look well." "I look old," Beatrice snapped. Her sharp eyes darted immediately to Cassidy. She scanned her from head to toe, looking for a loose thread, a scuff, a sign of weakness. "So, this is the mystery woman." "Cassidy Miller," Cassidy said, extending her hand. "It is an honor to meet you, Mrs. Sterling." Beatrice didn't take the hand. "Miller, I don't know the family. Who are your people?" "I don't come from a dynasty, Mrs. Sterling," Cassidy said, retracting her hand gracefully, refusing to look embarrassed. "I come from Brooklyn. My parents were hard-working people who taught me that character matters more than lineage." Sebastian stiffened beside her. It was a risky answer. Beatrice stared at her. Then a slow, thin smile spread across her face. "Brooklyn. Rough. Sebastian always did like to play in the dirt." "I'm not dirt, Mrs. Sterling," Cassidy said, her voice cool and pleasant. "I'm the woman who makes your grandson happy, and considering how miserable he usually looks, I'd say that's a valuable asset." Beatrice chuckled. It was a dry, rasping sound. "She has teeth. Good, you'll need them." The first test was passed. But the night wasn't over. An hour later, Cassidy found herself alone near the Champagne Tower, while Sebastian was pulled away to talk numbers with a senator. She took a breath, trying to calm her nerves, when a shadow fell over her. Well, the new flavor of the month. She turned to see a man who looked like a sharper, crueler version of Sebastian. He had the same dark hair, but his eyes were brown and filled with malice. He held a Scotch glass and smirked at her. Dominic Kane, Cassidy guessed. Smart girl, Dominic said, stepping too close, invading her personal space. Did he give you a dossier to memorize, or did you just Google me? I know enough, Cassidy said, stepping back. Do you know that Sebastian is using you? Dominic swirled his drink. He needs the board's vote next week. Once he gets it, he'll discard you like he does everyone else. Ask his last assistant. Oh wait, he fired him for breathing wrong. I'm not his assistant, Cassidy said. I'm his fiancé. Please, Dominic laughed. I did a little digging while you were playing dress-up. Cassidy Miller, waitress at the Gilded Oak, high school diploma, brother in debt. You're not a fiancé, sweetheart. You're a paid actor. Cassidy's heart hammered. He knew. If he exposed her right now, in front of everyone, the deal was off. She would lose the money. Toby would lose his school. Dominic leaned in, his breath smelling of alcohol. Here is what is going to happen. You're going to leave right now. You're going to make a scene. Throw a drink. Cry. Show Beatrice that you're unstable trash. If you do, I'll pay you double what Sebastian is offering. It was a trap. If she caused a scene, Sebastian lost the vote. If she didn't, Dominic would expose her. Cassidy looked across the room. She saw Sebastian. He was looking at her. He wasn't looking at her like a boss looking at an employee. He was watching her with an intensity that felt protective. She looked back at Dominic. You think money is the only thing that motivates people, Cassidy said softly. It's the only thing that matters. Cassidy smiled. It was the same smile she used on rude customers right before she had them thrown out. You're wrong, she said. She reached out and plucked the Scotch glass from Dominic's hand. Hygiene matters too. What? You have lipstick on your collar, Mr. Kane, Cassidy said loudly enough for the group of socialites nearby to hear. And since your wife is currently in the Hamptons, I read that in page 6 this morning. I assume that's why you're trying to intimidate me, to distract from your own mess. It was a bluff. There was no lipstick, but the nearby socialites gasped and turned to look. Dominic panicked, his hand flying to his neck. You little, is there a problem here? Sebastian's voice boomed. He appeared at Cassidy's side like a dark, avenging angel. He put his arm around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Your date is confused, Sebastian, Dominic snarled, face red. She's hallucinating. I think she sees things very clearly, Sebastian said, staring Dominic down. Stay away from my future wife, Dominic, or I will buy the bank that holds your mortgage and foreclose on your house just for the sport of it. Dominic turned and stormed off, humiliated. Sebastian looked down at Cassidy. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were blazing. Did he hurt you? No, Cassidy said, her adrenaline crashing. He tried to bribe me. He knows I was a waitress. I know he knows. He's predictable, Sebastian said. But you handled him. I lied, she admitted. There was no lipstick. For the first time since they met, the corner of Sebastian's mouth twitched upward. It wasn't a full smile, but it was real. Remind me never to cross you, Cassidy, he murmured. He leaned in. To the cameras it looked like a romantic whisper. You were perfect. For a split second, Cassidy forgot about the contract. She forgot about the money. She just felt the heat of his body and the strange magnetic pull of his approval. But the moment was shattered by the sound of a glass breaking across the room. A man in a cheap windbreaker had pushed past security. He was shouting, "Sebastian Sterling, you thief! You ruined my life!" Security tackled him, but not before he threw a handful of flyers into the air. They rained down on the gala guests like confetti. Sebastian caught one. His face went pale. Cassidy grabbed one, too. It was a photo of a factory. Underneath, in bold red letters, it said, "Sterling Dynamics poisons water. Hundreds sick. The CEO knows." "Sebastian," Cassidy asked, looking at him, "what is this?" Sebastian crumpled the paper in his fist. The vulnerability was gone. The Reaper was back. "We're leaving," he said coldly. "Now." He dragged her toward the exit, his grip tight enough to bruise. Cassidy looked back at the scattering papers. She had entered the lion's den, thinking the danger was the lion himself. She was wrong. The danger was the jungle he ruled, and she was right in the middle of it. The limousine tore through the streets of Manhattan, ignoring speed limits and red lights. Inside, the silence was heavier than lead. Sebastian sat in the corner, his jaw clenched so tight a muscle feathered in his cheek. He was staring out the window, but his eyes saw nothing. In his hand, he still crushed the crumpled flyer. Cassidy sat opposite him, her heart racing. The image on the flyer, the sick children, the poisoned water, was burned into her mind. "Is it true?" Cassidy asked. Her voice was quiet, but in the silence of the car, it sounded like a gunshot. Sebastian didn't turn. "I told you, it's a smear campaign. Dominic is desperate." "That wasn't an answer," Cassidy said, leaning forward. "You're a businessman, Sebastian. You cut costs. You fire people for dropping plates. Did you poison a town to save a few dollars?" Sebastian turned then. The look in his eyes was terrifying, not because of anger, but because of the raw, wounded exhaustion behind the steel wall. "You think I'm a monster," he said flatly, "just like everyone else." "I don't know what you are," Cassidy shot back. "I know you paid my rent. I know you protected me from Dominic. But I also know that rich men get away with murder every day. If that flyer is real, I can't do this. I don't care about the $2 million. I won't help you cover up a crime." Sebastian stared at her. For a moment, she thought he would open the door and kick her out into the moving traffic. Instead, he tapped on the partition window. "Change of plans," he told the driver. "Head to the airfield. Prepare the helicopter." "Where are we going?" Cassidy demanded. The penthouse is surrounded by reporters," Sebastian snapped. "If you step out of this car in front of my building, they will rip you apart. They'll dig into your life, find your brother, harass him at his school. We have to go dark." "Dark?" "We're going to Blackwood." Blackwood turned out to be a sprawling, modernist estate carved into the side of a cliff in the Catskills, 2 hours north of the city. The helicopter ride had been silent. When they landed on the private pad, the wind was howling, whipping Cassidy's expensive gown around her legs. The house was cold. It smelled of cedar and disuse. Sebastian unlocked the heavy front door and disabled the alarm system. There were no staff members here, no assistants, just the two of them and the vast, empty wilderness. "There's food in the pantry," Sebastian said, tossing his tuxedo jacket onto a leather sofa. He loosened his tie, looking more unraveled than she had ever seen him. "The generator is full. We stay here until my legal team kills the story." He walked toward a liquor cabinet, poured a glass of whiskey, and downed it in one swallow. Cassidy watched him. She could have gone to a guest room and locked the door. But something about his posture, the slump of his shoulders, stopped her. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world. She walked into the kitchen. It was stocked with gourmet non-perishables. She found pasta, a jar of sauce, and some frozen vegetables. Without asking, she started cooking. 30 minutes later, the smell of garlic and tomato filled the cold house. Sebastian was standing on the deck, staring out at the dark forest, the wind tearing at his white shirt. "Eat," Cassidy said, placing a bowl on the outdoor table. Sebastian looked at the bowl, then at her. "I'm not hungry." "I didn't ask," Cassidy said, crossing her arms. "You've been drinking on an empty stomach. If you pass out, I'm not carrying you inside. Eat." Sebastian let out a short, incredulous huff of air. He picked up the fork. He took a bite. Then another. He ate like a starving man. When he finished, he put the bowl down and looked at her. The moonlight cast deep shadows across his face. "My father built the factory," Sebastian said suddenly. Cassidy froze. She sat down opposite him. "The one in the flyer?" "Yes. Sterling Chemicals. He built it 30 years ago. He cut corners. He buried waste in the soil because it was cheaper than processing it." Sebastian's voice was hollow. "He died 5 years ago. I took over. I found the reports 6 months ago." "And what did you do?" Cassidy asked, holding her breath. "I started a remediation project," Sebastian said. "Secretly. I've been pumping millions of dollars into cleaning the groundwater, installing new filters, and paying medical bills for the affected families through shell companies so they wouldn't know it was charity. I was fixing it." "Why secretly?" "Because if I admitted liability publicly before the cleanup was done, the board would have panicked. They would have shut the factory down, fired the 3,000 workers who live in that town, and declared bankruptcy to avoid the lawsuits. The town would die. I wanted to fix the problem and save the jobs." He looked at Cassidy, his blue eyes intense. "Someone found out I was fixing it. They leaked the old data, but they left out the part where I'm cleaning it up. They want it to look like I'm the villain, so the stock crashes. When the stock crashes, they can buy the company for pennies on the dollar." Cassidy studied his face. She had spent her life reading people. Customers who were lying about their order, landlords lying about repairs. She knew a liar. Sebastian wasn't lying. "It's Dominic," Cassidy whispered. "He wants your job." "It's not just Dominic," Sebastian said, running a hand through his hair. "He's not smart enough to get those internal documents. Someone on the inside gave them to him. Someone close to me." He looked at Cassidy, and for the first time, the icy CEO facade completely crumbled. He looked lonely. "I don't have anyone I can trust," he admitted softly. "Except apparently the waitress who isn't afraid to yell at me." Cassidy felt a pull in her chest. She reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. His skin was cold. Hers was warm. He didn't pull away. He turned his hand over and interlaced his fingers with hers, gripping tight. "I believe you," Cassidy said. Sebastian looked at their joined hands. "You shouldn't. I dragged you into this mess." "I dragged myself in," she corrected, "and we're going to get you out of it." For a moment, the air between them changed. It wasn't about business anymore. Sebastian leaned in, his gaze dropping to her lips. Cassidy's breath hitched. The wind howled around them. But in that small space, everything was still. He was inches away. She could smell the whiskey and the expensive soap. She wanted him to close the gap. But then his phone buzzed violently on the table. Sebastian pulled back, the moment shattering like glass. He looked at the screen. His face hardened. The Reaper was back. "It's my lawyer," he said, standing up abruptly. "The stock dropped 40% in after-hours trading. The board has called an emergency vote for tomorrow morning. They're going to fire me." The helicopter touched down on the roof of Sterling Tower at 6 a.m. The city was grey and rainy, matching the mood inside the building. The offices of Sterling Dynamics were in chaos. Phones were ringing off the hooks. Staff members were running through the corridors with boxes, shredding documents, or crying. It looked like the deck of the Titanic. Sebastian marched through the bullpen, Cassidy right on his heels. "Silas!" Sebastian barked. Silas Thorne, the company's chief legal officer and Sebastian's oldest friend, came running out of his office. Silas was a sharp-featured man with glasses and a nervous twitch. "Sebastian!" "Thank God," Silas said, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's a bloodbath. Dominic has convinced the board that you authorized the pollution. They're voting at 9 a.m. You have 3 hours before you lose everything." "I need the remediation files," Sebastian said, unbuttoning his coat. "The proof that I've been cleaning the water. We show them the invoices, the geological surveys. It proves I was solving the problem, not causing it." I can't find them," Silas said, looking down. "The server was wiped last night. A cyber attack. All the proof of your cleanup is gone." Sebastian stopped it. He went deadly stillness. "Gone?" "Everything," Silas said. "Without those files, it's your word against the leaked documents. And the board hates you, Sebastian. They'll believe the worst." Sebastian walked into his office and slammed the door, hard enough to shake the glass walls. Cassidy stood outside, watching Silas. The lawyer looked devastated. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Is there really nothing left?" Cassidy asked him. Silas jumped, as if he had forgotten she was there. "Miss Miller, no, it's a catastrophe. I've tried to recover the data, but it's hopeless. You should go. When the board fires him, security will escort everyone out." Silas turned and hurried back toward his own office. Cassidy watched him go. Something nagged at her. It was a waitress instinct, the same one that told her when a table was going to dine and dash. Silas was nervous. Too nervous. And he hadn't looked Sebastian in the eye. She looked at Sebastian's office door. He was on the phone, shouting at someone. He didn't need a fake fiancé right now. He needed a detective. Cassidy didn't go into Sebastian's office. Instead, she slipped down the hallway, following Silas. She watched him enter his corner office and close the blinds. Not all the way, though. There was a 2-inch gap. Cassidy kicked off her high heels so she could walk silently on the carpet. She crept up to the door and peered through the crack. Silas was sitting at his desk. He wasn't panicking anymore. He was calm. He opened a safe hidden behind a painting on his wall. He pulled out a hard drive, a silver, ruggedized drive. He placed it in his briefcase. Then he picked up his phone. "It's done," Silas said into the phone. His voice was smooth, devoid of the stutter he had used earlier. "The server is wiped. I have the only copy of the cleanup data on the drive. I'm bringing it to you now. Once Sebastian is fired, you destroy the drive, and the company is yours." He paused, listening. "Don't worry, Dominic. Sebastian is too arrogant to suspect me. I'm his best friend. See you in 20 minutes. Cassidy's blood ran cold. Silas wasn't just incompetent. He was the mole. He was the one who had leaked the info, and now he was stealing the only evidence that could prove Sebastian's innocence. He was handing the company to Dominic Kane. Silas snapped the briefcase shut and stood up. Cassidy looked around wildly. The hallway was empty. If Silas left with that drive, Sebastian was finished. She didn't think. She didn't plan. She acted. As Silas opened his door, Cassidy lunged. She didn't have a weapon, so she used the element of surprise. She slammed her shoulder into him, knocking him back into his office. "What the?" Silas shouted, stumbling over his own feet. Cassidy grabbed the briefcase handle. "You traitor!" Silas, though surprised, was a grown man and significantly stronger than her. He recovered quickly, grabbing the other end of the briefcase. They wrestled for it, knocking over a lamp and a stack of files. "Let go, you stupid girl!" Silas snarled, his face twisting into a sneer. You have no idea what you're involved in. I know you're selling him out, Cassidy screamed, kicking him in the shin. Silas grunted in pain, but didn't let go. He shoved her hard. Cassidy flew backward, hitting her head against the corner of the heavy oak desk. Stars exploded in her vision. She slumped to the floor, dazed. The briefcase fell from her grip. Silas stood over her, breathing heavily. He adjusted his tie. You should have stayed serving coffee, Cassidy. You're out of your league. He grabbed the briefcase and turned to run. Security! He yelled as he ran into the hall. Help! That woman is crazy! She attacked me! Cassidy struggled to sit up, her vision swimming. She felt warm blood trickling down the side of her face. She had failed. Silas was getting away. Cassidy. Sebastian was there. He had heard the noise. He ran into the office, seeing her on the floor, the blood on her temple. The color drained from his face. Cassidy! He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering, afraid to touch her. What happened? Who did this? Silas, Cassidy rasped, grabbing his lapel. Silas, he has the drive, the cleanup files. He's taking them to Dominic. Sebastian's head snapped up. He looked at the door. He looked back at her, torn. He wanted to chase Silas, but seeing the blood on Cassidy's face, seeing how pale she was, he couldn't leave her. I need to get you a doctor, Sebastian said, his voice shaking. No, Cassidy pushed him. Go. If he leaves the building, you lose the company. You lose everything your father built. Go get him, Sebastian. I'm fine. I don't care about the company, Sebastian roared. You're bleeding. It's just a cut, she pleaded, tears mixing with the blood. Please, don't let them win. Go be the Reaper. Sebastian looked at her. He saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had shocked him in the restaurant. He leaned down and pressed a fierce kiss to her forehead. I'll be back, he vowed. He stood up and sprinted out of the office. Sebastian didn't take the elevator. He hit the stairwell, taking the steps 3 at a time. He burst into the lobby just as Silas was spinning through the revolving doors to the waiting street. Stop him! Sebastian bellowed to the lobby security. Stop that man! But Silas was already outside. A black sedan was waiting at the curb. Dominic Kane's car. Silas threw the briefcase into the back seat and dove in after it. The car screeched away into the morning traffic. Sebastian burst onto the sidewalk, chest heaving. He was too late. The evidence was gone. He stood there in the rain, the water soaking his shirt. He had lost. The board meeting was in 40 minutes. He had no proof. He was going to walk into that boardroom and be executed. But as he turned back toward the building, his phone buzzed. It was a text message. From Cassidy. He unlocked it. It was a video file. He pressed play. The video was shaky. It was filmed from a low angle, from the floor of Silas's office. On the screen, Silas was standing over the camera. He was adjusting his tie. You should have stayed serving coffee, Cassidy. I know you're selling him out. You have no idea what you're involved in. Then, the audio from before the fight picked up. Cassidy must have started recording the moment she hid outside the door. Silas's voice came through clear as a bell. It's done. The server is wiped. I have the only copy. I'm bringing it to you now. Sebastian is too arrogant to suspect me. Sebastian stared at the phone. She had recorded him. Even after he shoved her, even while she was bleeding on the floor, she had the presence of mind to keep the camera rolling. A slow, terrifying smile spread across Sebastian Sterling's face. It wasn't the smile of a businessman. It was the smile of a man who had just been handed a loaded gun. He texted Cassidy back, I'm coming to get you. Then, we're going to the boardroom. The waitress hadn't just saved his job. She had just handed him Dominic Kane's head on a platter. The heavy double doors of the boardroom burst open with a crash that made half the board members jump. Sebastian Sterling strode in, not like a man facing execution, but like a king returning to claim his throne. Beside him, wearing a fresh blazer over her torn gown and a stark white bandage on her temple, walked Cassidy. Dominic Caney was already sitting at the head of the table, a smug smile plastered on his face. "You're late, Sebastian, and you're trespassing. The board has already voted to remove you as CEO pending an investigation." "Then I suggest you take a recess," Sebastian said, his voice deadly calm. He didn't sit. He walked straight to the main projector system and plugged in his phone. "This is highly irregular," a board member sputtered. "Mr. Sterling, you are accused of environmental crimes." "No," Sebastian said, looking at Dominic. "I am accused of fixing a problem my father created, and I'm accused by a man who needed to steal my data to frame me." He hit play. Cassidy's video projected onto the massive screen. The audio was crisp. The boardroom listened in stunned silence as Silas Thorne's voice filled the room, admitting to the wipe, the theft, and the deal with Dominic. "Don't worry, Dominic. Sebastian is too arrogant to suspect me." When the video ended, the room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. All eyes turned to Dominic. His smug smile had vanished, replaced by a look of sheer terror. Beatrice Sterling spun her wheelchair around. Her eyes were hard as diamonds. "Dominic," she said, her voice trembling with rage, "you tried to steal my company by bribing my legal counsel and framing my grandson." "It's a fake!" Dominic shouted, standing up. "Deep fake technology. That waitress is a fraud." "The police are downstairs with Silas," Sebastian said coldly. "He's already confessing to avoid jail time. Security, remove Mr. Kane from my building. If he resists, throw him down the stairs." Two guards grabbed Dominic by the arms and dragged him out, kicking and screaming. Beatrice looked at Sebastian, then at Cassidy. She nodded, a rare sign of genuine respect. "Motion to reinstate Sebastian Sterling as CEO, effective immediately," she announced. "All in favor?" Every hand went up. 2 hours later, the chaos had subsided. The sun was setting over the city, painting the skyline in hues of orange and purple. Sebastian and Cassidy stood on the private terrace of the penthouse. "You have your company back," Cassidy said softly, leaning against the railing. "And your reputation." "I have something much more important than that," Sebastian said. He reached into his jacket pocket. He didn't pull out a check. He pulled out the contract they had signed, the one promising her $2 million. He held a lighter to the corner of the paper. "What are you doing?" Cassidy gasped. "That's my money." "The contract is void," Sebastian said, watching the paper turn to ash. "I told you there was one rule. If either of us fell in love, the deal was off." Cassidy's heart stopped. I broke the rule," Sebastian said. He stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands, his thumb brushing over the bandage on her forehead. "I don't want a business partner, Cassidy. I don't want a fake fiancé. I want the woman who stood up to me in a restaurant. I want the woman who took a blow to the head to save my legacy." He dropped to one knee. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a diamond ring, not a prop from a stylist, but a vintage stone that glittered in the twilight. "Cassidy Miller," the Reaper of Wall Street said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't want to pretend anymore. Will you marry me?" "For real?" Cassidy looked at the man who had terrified her, challenged her, and protected her. She smiled, tears filling her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, "but if you ever fire a busboy for dropping a plate again, I'm divorcing you." Sebastian laughed, a true, joyous sound that echoed over the city. He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her as the city lights flickered to life below them. The waitress had served him, saved him, and ultimately, she had tamed him. Wow, what a journey. From a shattered wine glass in a restaurant to a boardroom showdown, Cassidy proved that true strength isn't about how much money you have in the bank. It's about character, courage, and standing up for what's right. Sebastian thought he could buy a solution to his life, but he ended up finding the one thing money can't buy: true love. What did you think of Sebastian's transformation? Do you think he deserved a second chance after how he treated people in the beginning? And would you have had the courage to record Silas while he was attacking you? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of romance, betrayal, and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss our next dramatic story. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next video.